So, I haven't made this particular mistake before, which might be somewhat surprising, but this video is going to be a bit shy of some of the footage it should have had. You know, if I hadn't manually deleted half of the shots off the SD card, clip by clip, in the camera, this morning. It's all kind of a bummer, because, you know, this is a painting video where footage kind of matters. Greetings, good humans, and welcome to Tabletop Alchemy, where sometimes we gotta do some true, honest-to-goodness speed painting, because we don't want to proxy miniatures in a rapidly approaching skirmish game with friends. Even though the minis I'm deciding to speed paint are actually proxies. I know, this channel's full of nonsense. And we thank our patrons for supporting said nonsense. Okay, so I'm basically in scramble mode, trying to get all the terrain and miniatures. Oh, and yeah, the terrain we're going to talk about in another video entirely. But I'm trying to get all this stuff ready to run the next batch of scenarios in the Rangers Shadowdeep mission for my friends. So looking at the upcoming scenarios in the Rangers book, I saw that I needed a couple of ogres for the challenge level, and a gnoll shaman, and at least 2 gnoll sergeants, which is why I painted up the beast lords in this video. And a Skaven plague monk and those 2 ogres in this other video. Can I have 2 snaps so close together? Probably not. Well, there's a Painting Minis playlist on the channel, in case you missed those and want to see them. Anyway, seeing that I'm going to start needing gnolls for scenarios, I went ahead and oh boy. Yeah, deleting clips really affects your psyche on the day. I went ahead and bought a box of gnolls from North Star Miniatures, but to be perfectly honest, my admittedly rampant snobbery got in my way. I mean, I put 4 of them together and then I just quit. I think that the value for the money they cost is pretty great. I got the box of 30 gnolls for 25 bucks, so that's a pretty good price, I think, for that many miniatures. And they are highly customizable, so that's very cool. But their sculpts are just, I don't know, man. I just don't find the figures inspiring. But that's just me. It's not meant as any kind of slight against anyone else's opinion. I think they are actually probably pretty cool miniatures. They just weren't inspiring me to want to paint them. So in a bit of a panic, I went shopping through my pile of opportunity and found that I have a box of Games Workshop Beastmen, and I thought, okay, I could proxy these gores as gnolls. That'd be cool. I mean, they're just goats instead of hyenas, right? Of course, it's fine to proxy anything you want in any game. I mean, aside from, you know, Games Workshop tournaments. I'm well aware that that's not the case there, but then I started considering how to turn some of these Beastmen into archers as well as melee figures, because we definitely need archer gnolls on the table. I know there's a unit called ungors that have some bows, so in the interest of being frugal, I wondered if I could just maybe find some Warhammer bits, specifically some bows and arrows, or crossbows, or whatever. So I went on eBay, that was mistake number 1, and found some Games Workshop Unger Raider bow bits. I found 5 of them. I guess they must come with just 5. I don't know. But I found 5 of them with bows. Pretty affordable, like $1 a piece or something. And I thought they might work for some mild kit bashes. But then I saw something else right after I ordered those Ungor parts. I saw these hedonists of Slanesh Blissbar bows. And I thought, A, those look cool with all their spikes. And B, they're called Blissbar bows. This is a no-brainer. So I had to order those too. And I'm pretty glad I did, actually, because the Blissbar bows, the Blissbarbs, they're bigger than the Ungor Raider bows, and they look better on the Beastmen, the gores that I'm painting up. Now, I know what you're thinking. And yes, I did go on Etsy. And yes, I did find some very badass 3D sculpted gnolls that I really, really wanted to go with. But to get a minimum of 10 of these guys with a minimum of 5 archers, it was going to cost me probably around $100. And I just wasn't prepared to do that. I'm not going to tell you that later I found a site that was selling them for $4 a piece. So I probably could have got 10 of them for $40, which would have been totally fine. Anyway, while I was in shopping mode, the FOMO module kicked in, which we all know spits out this very dangerous tightrope we all walk on as tabletop gamers, right? We all know what I'm talking about. So another thing that has been going on the last couple of weeks in the course of me trying to get this video out was Skaven Tide dropped, the new Age of Sigmar edition from Games Workshop. And I do like me some Skaven miniatures, because just like you, I love the Secret of Nim. That's right. But even though I've always wanted Skaven minis, I never got around to collecting them, way back in the day when I was building full armies. But currently in the pile of opportunity, I've got all three of the small sets of Skaven from the Underworlds game. And when I scoped out the Skaven Tide box, I found that I really didn't care about 90% of its contents. So it wasn't like I was going to drop $200 or $250 for that box just to get some rats. Except, there's always an exception. It's a rule of the universe. Look it up. I was on eBay, remember? And, I said that was mistake number 1. I don't know what mistake number 2 was. I guess deleting those clips was mistake number 2, but we're not going to talk about that. But I was on eBay, tightrope and everything else. And anyway, I saw completely by algorithmic chance, I swear, folks were parting out these Skaven Tide figures, and I saw a set of 20 new on sprue clan rats for $20. And I was like, that's kind of cheaper than that box of North Star gnolls I got. And I declare Skaven a great replacement for gnolls. Why not? And then I went to that eBay listing for clan rats, and I was treated to the Grey Seer miniature being parted out for $15, which we all know if it's going to be sold in its separate little blister pack, it's going to be $35 or $37 or $39. So I thought that was a good deal. And the seller also had the Skaven Tide Skaven terrain bits for $12, and that was a pretty cool deal, I felt. And so, I didn't spend $100 on 10 minis. I spent half of that on a bunch more minis. I am what I am. Terrible collectoritis is what I have. I wanted some Skaven. Come on, cut me a break. Obviously, I'm being disingenuous with myself because I already had decided to paint the Gores as proxies for the gnolls, and then I bought the Skaven going, those would be good proxies for the gnolls, even though I knew I was already going to use the Beastmen. And so I was just buying the Skaven to buy Skaven. It's, we fabricate excuses on the fly so well for ourselves. Anyway, the one parameter I set for myself in this speed painting session of these guys was, this is genuine speed painting. I have no time to worry about mistakes or details, none of that stuff. It's just not allowed today. So the footage I deleted was the first half of the painting regiment, and I showed in that footage, which I then deleted, the miniatures with the bows kit bashed onto the Beastmen's hands, and then I showed my airbrush Zenithal, which I intentionally put down as a lighter overall primer coat. I used a neutral gray for the dark color instead of black, and then a light gray for overall highlighting, and then white for a directional highlighting. Now, I always think the full black undercoat is a bit too strong for the shadows for me. I mean, obviously putting transparent paints over black primer doesn't really provide much in the way of color, and where it does, it's usually in the recesses, which kind of looks wrong, so I went with the mid-tone gray for shadows. I then put down a few coats of progressively darker skin tones on all the unfurry skin parts, and then I went in with express greasy black for the fur, because these dudes must have greasy, gross fur, right? I don't think they have table manners. Oh, and I included the fancy braids in their hair and stuff in that whole greasy black thing, but maybe these guys do have table manners. I mean, they have braids, so that kind of implies some kind of domesticity, right? Did I even say that right? Domesticity? I don't know. They're going to hairdressers, man. I don't know. They've got some kind of society going on. Anyway, here we are with the actual footage I have left, and I'm gonna go in here with some dark brown for the wood bits. But I was thinking that it's a bummer to just go with regular brown because that's so close to the skin tones. And then I got a wild hair, and I was like, what about that moldy wood idea? So I put some of this plague green express color on the palette and did the wood bits in this very nice olivey-ish green, and I was like, that's actually pretty cool right there. So I went ahead and did all the weapon halves and the bows in this green as well, and while it was totally unplanned and literally not the color scheme I really want for these guys, I think as a color scheme overall, this green with the warm skin tones is actually pretty cool. I want to use it on some kind of unit other unit now. Maybe with those clan rats I picked up. That might be pretty cool. So we'll see. Anyway, I thought, what the hell? Let's paint all the metal bits in this green too, with the intention of going over them with metallics down the line. But I was just wondering if that would give them some sort of different look than the typical black I usually put down. I mean, I even painted the arrows from the Ungor Raiders I put on the archer dudes. I painted those all green too, just, I don't know, just because I was being speedy and just kind of moving as quick as I could. Now, except for this dude's big ass axe, for some reason I put that in greasy black as a base coat instead of the green. I thought maybe because it had those symbols engraved on it, they'd look better in black versus green. And then I promptly did more of the metal parts on that guy in the black too, because I'm nothing if not super consistent with carrying out my ideas. Anyway, I continued to put that black on all the leather parts as well, again, just because I didn't want to go with the typical brown leather because of the whole skin tone similarity thing. Then I put the Express Bag of Bones color on all the horns, and I tried putting it a little heavier near the base of the horns on each guy, but I didn't want to spend time doing multiple coats with multiple colors or densities. This is speed painting. Get on with it. Now, I had to base coat any spot that was going to be yellow, just like I did for the Beast Lords, but I really only based these bits of cloth stapled to a couple of the shields, because I'd inadvertently painted them full green when I was painting the shields, and the yellow would never show over that stuff. I did take a peek at the loincloths all the Beastmen are wearing, but I really just left those alone in the interest of time. I didn't even bother to cover any color splotches or mistakes over the light primer that was on them. I just figured those spots would be weathery. Moving on. Then I laid down the yellow. Accidentally in reverse of the way I laid down the yellow on the sergeants, again from the other video, I put the darker yellow down first and then realized I'd done it differently, and so I switched to the lighter yellow. I did 2 coats over the yellow spots, but again, I didn't really stress about anything. It was just, like I said, all about getting these done fast. I put some reddish brown on the bases to tie the base color to the overall color scheme, with the full intention of putting down a similar flock to what I did on the Beast Lord bases. Oh, and here we go. Here's a second coat of that darker nuclear yellow express color over the brighter imperial yellow. So at least I did that right, sort of. I then tested out Gnoll oil on one brown base and a Thonian camo shade on another, just to see what the end result was going to look like. I ended up putting the camo shade on the rest of the bases just because it added a little bit to the overall look, I guess. I had to matte varnish the yellow bits. Apparently the express color yellows are glossy. I'm not sure why. The rest of the colors on these figures, these are all painted, I think, entirely with express colors. And they all dried super matte, which is one of the reasons I really like these Vallejo contrast paints. They look really nice after they're dry, but the yellows are glossy. So down goes the matte coat. Anyway, I used this Vallejo Game Color Dark Metal again to keep these guys in line with how I painted their superiors. And again, I do like this paint. I kind of just base coated over all the green and black I'd painted on any of the metal bits, or bits intended to be metallic. Then I thinned some of this skin ink 2 different ways on the palette. One batch with water and one batch with express medium. Now this is for the rusty metal weathering look, and I just went back and forth between those two to douse all the dark metal bits, just kind of gauging, oh, I wanted a little thinner here, I'd use the stuff I thinned with water, and when I wanted a little more color density, I used the stuff I thinned with the express medium. And that's one of the cool things I like about Vallejo's ink and express color line, is that they do say, hey, you're totally cool to thin these with water if you want, and not have to use the mediums. It's pretty cool that their paint formula works that way. Anyway, I then used the bright silver to do the metallic highlights, and I did this pretty sparingly, just trying to pop some shine onto each bit and make it stand out a little. I kind of went for some of that chipping look, or, you know, spots where the rusty metal had been nicked or rubbed back down to the raw steel, but again, I'm just moving really quick and not paying too much attention to anything other than trying to make sure I didn't hit accidentally any non-metallic areas with the silver. And then I was going to call it, but the arrow fletching being the same green as the wooden arrow shafts it just bugged me a little too much, and instead of going with bright red or yellow, which would have been obviously 2 better choices, I went with the blue I'd put on one of the Beast Lords. I kind of regret that now, and probably should go back and put red or yellow on the fletching, but For right now, they just are what they are. Now, this squad leader dude's big-ass axe, I just didn't like the muddiness of the gray leather wraps on the handle. It all just kind of looked like too much green, so I thought in this one case, some brown leather would be a good move, just to sort of give it some contrast. And then since the muddy ground brown, the muddy ground brown express color was on the palette, I decided to thin it with some medium and use it to give us a simple, subtle, dark gradient on those green shields. I thought, damn it, okay, I'll do it on the larger weapon halves as well. Like everything else on these guys, a second, more dramatically dark gradient would look better, but hey, speed paint. So then I mixed up some weird flocks I have, making sure there was red and orange and yellow in there, and I poured that stuff all over the bases. I wasn't sure if the bigger clumps of red and orange would work out, but I think they're actually okay. I just watered down PVA glue, nothing special, and added more of that over the flock itself after it was applied, and onto that I sprinkled more of the pure yellow flock, which is super fine and has tiny, tiny bits of red and green in it. Again, just going with this motif of yellow, and I thought that maybe since these rank and file dudes didn't have much in the way of yellow cloth on them, putting more yellow on the bases was maybe appropriate. And there they are. I think I actually got these guys all done over 10 actual work hours. You know, not like, hey, it took me a 10-hour day during which I had, 3 meals and 17 coffee breaks and an hour of video games. I mean, like this is the result of probably 10 actual hours of sitting at the hobby table, putting paint on miniatures and flock, I guess. I think overall they look okay as a group. I don't like that the horns are kind of the same yellow as the bases and they lack a lot of contrast, but I can easily go back and darken those, with something. I might actually do that for real because after all this and the terrain stuff we're going to talk about in another video that I speed put together and order, anyway, after all of that, the whole game day I was getting ready for, it had to be canceled due to heat. Now my apartment doesn't have AC because I live by the beach and they're like, you're not going to need AC, except when you do. And when we had the last heat wave here in Southern California, it would be wonderful if it was the last heat wave, but it probably isn't. But when we had the last heat wave, it was 85 degrees inside my apartment in the afternoon. I could barely take it. And there was no way any of my friends who all have AC would have remotely enjoyed themselves at all. But hopefully we'll get another day set up soon because I made all this stuff for it. So I'm ready to go now. And maybe I can go back and touch up some of these guys I speed painted just to make them a little bit cooler because I have a little bit more time. All right, well, stay cool. I mean, stay cool when it's hot and stay cool when bad things happen. See ya.